Samantha Ashford was 36 years old when she learned, with uncomfortable clarity, how her family truly measured her worth. It happened at Christmas dinner, in the cramped living room of the house she had grown up in, where the air smelled of roasted turkey, gravy, and familiarity that no longer felt safe. The table was crowded with plates and half-filled wine glasses. Laughter moved easily between relatives. Samantha sat near the end, hands folded neatly in her lap, listening more than she spoke. Patricia Ashford, her mother, had always enjoyed using humor as a blade wrapped in velvet. Halfway through the meal, she lifted her fork, gestured toward Samantha, and smiled. "So," Patricia said, her tone light but deliberate, "how's that little online thing you do? Still playing around on a laptop instead of finding a real job?" The table erupted in laughter, quick and careless. Before I continue, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from today. Your one click really helps support the channel. Michael Ashford, Samantha's older brother, laughed the loudest, nearly choking on his drink. Samantha smiled on instinct, the expression practiced and painless on the surface. "It's going fine," she said calmly. She did not defend herself. She never did. Weeks earlier, she had planned this dinner down to the minute, ordering expensive food through delivery apps, timing arrivals so everything would appear effortless. None of that registered with them. To her family, Samantha was still the one who made do, the quiet daughter who survived on vague freelance work and luck. As the conversation drifted back to Michael's grand plans and unrealized potential, Samantha excused herself and moved toward the living room, carrying the familiar weight of being invisible in a room she had paid to fill. The living room was dimmer, lit mostly by the glow of the television and the colored Christmas lights blinking unevenly along the window frame. Samantha set her laptop on the coffee table and opened it, intending to check something quickly before returning to refill Patricia's wine. On the screen was a live dashboard she checked every morning without ceremony. Numbers updated in real time, clean and precise. Years of work reduced to data points, charts, and totals that told a story no one at that table had ever bothered to ask about. She glanced at the figures, confirmed everything was steady, and stood to head back toward the kitchen. She thought she had closed the screen. She had not. Minutes later, Michael wandered in, phone in hand, looking for a place to sit away from the noise. He dropped onto the couch, glanced down, and froze. His laughter from earlier drained from his face as he leaned closer to the screen. A single number sat at the top of the dashboard, impossible to miss. 14 million. Michael's voice cracked when he shouted her name, calling everyone into the room. Chairs scraped. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Patricia appeared first, then the others, crowding around the coffee table. The mood shifted in seconds, laughter evaporating into disbelief. "What is this?" Patricia demanded, her voice sharp. Michael jabbed a finger at the screen. "Tell me this is fake," he said. Samantha looked at the number, then at their faces, and felt something settle inside her. "It's not fake," she said evenly. "It's my portfolio." No one congratulated her. No one smiled. They stared as if she had been caught committing a crime. The accusation came before the understanding. Patricia's chair clattered to the floor as she stood. $14 million, she shouted. "You have $14 million and you didn't think to tell your own family." Michael's face flushed red. "You let us struggle," he said, voice rising. "You let Mom drown in bills while you sat on that kind of money." Samantha inhaled slowly. "I've been sending money every month," she said. "For years." Patricia waved her hand dismissively. "Drips," she snapped. "That's what you call help? We raised you. We sacrificed everything. That money isn't just yours." Michael stepped closer, his voice urgent now. "Do you know what I could do with that kind of capital? I could fix everything." Samantha met his eyes. "You had chances," she said. "You chose to gamble." The room erupted, voices overlapping, blame ricocheting. Patricia shifted tactics, softening her tone. She reached for Samantha's arm. "Sweetheart, this is more than one person needs. A good daughter would help her family." The words were familiar, rehearsed. Samantha felt the years compress into a single moment. "I have helped," she said. "While I worked 2 jobs. While I built this. You never asked how." Michael scoffed. "You think that screen makes you better than us?" Samantha straightened. "No," she said. "It just makes the truth harder for you to ignore." The argument burned fast and ugly. Michael accused her of greed, of betrayal, of choosing money over blood. Patricia cried loudly, invoking suffering and loyalty, threatening what people would think if they knew Samantha refused to help her own family. Samantha listened until the words lost their edge. Then she spoke. "I'm done sending money," she said. The room went silent. Michael kicked a chair, sending it skidding across the floor. He lunged toward the coffee table. Samantha stepped forward, her voice calm and firm. "Touch my things and I call the police." He froze. Patricia stared at her as if she were a stranger. "If you walk out that door," Patricia said coldly, "don't bother coming back." Samantha picked up her coat and laptop. "I've been walking alone my whole life," she said quietly. "This is just the first time you noticed." She left without looking back. By the time she reached her apartment, her phone buzzed non-stop. Messages. Missed calls. A long post from Patricia online, framing Samantha as an ungrateful daughter who chose wealth over family. Michael added his own dramatic commentary, casting himself as a victim denied help. Samantha set the phone down, opened her laptop, and emailed her lawyer instead of checking her accounts. The response was swift and measured. Her lawyer explained her options without judgment, using words like defamation and harassment with calm precision. Within days, formal letters were sent, demanding the post stop and the lies be removed. Patricia called in a fury, accusing Samantha of tearing the family apart. Samantha repeated the same sentence each time. "If you stop lying about me, you'll never hear from my lawyer again." Michael tried bravado, claiming no court would side with a wealthy woman over her family. His posts disappeared anyway. Without Samantha's transfers, reality arrived quickly. Michael's gambling collapsed under its own weight. Credit lines closed. Pressure mounted. Eventually, he was forced into treatment after a scare that could no longer be ignored. Patricia sold the house to manage the damage and moved into a smaller place, her narrative unraveling as people began asking questions she could not answer. Samantha's life grew quieter. She hired help, set boundaries, and redirected part of her success into programs teaching financial literacy to girls who had learned too early to be the strong one. Some nights, she thought about that dinner and understood the truth. The money hadn't changed her family. It had simply revealed them. Long before money became the center of the argument, Samantha had learned what it meant to take up as little space as possible. She grew up in a small apartment on the edge of the city, the kind of place where walls carried sound and privacy was a luxury no one could afford. When her father died in a sudden car accident, the apartment seemed to shrink overnight. Bills arrived faster than solutions. Patricia took on longer hours at work and returned home exhausted and brittle. Michael, 2 years older than Samantha, absorbed most of her remaining energy. He was loud, emotional, and prone to spirals that demanded constant attention. Patricia often said Michael was sensitive, that life hit him harder than others. Samantha was described differently. "You're strong," Patricia would say when Samantha brought home good grades or handled problems on her own. It sounded like praise, but it came with an unspoken condition. Strong meant low maintenance. Strong meant not needing much. When Michael struggled, the house slowed down for him. When Samantha succeeded, it barely paused. She learned quickly that asking for help only created friction, so she stopped asking. She cooked simple meals, did laundry, and learned to solve problems quietly. Independence was not a personality trait. It was a survival skill she picked up early and carried without complaint. By the time Samantha reached high school, she understood that no one in that apartment was planning a different future for her. If she wanted one, she would have to build it herself. She joined a business club mostly because it kept her at school longer, away from the constant noise at home. In the library, she discovered free online courses and taught herself basic coding late at night on the family's aging laptop. Michael dominated the television, shouting at basketball games and tracking scores with obsessive focus. Samantha learned to work through distraction. One afternoon, while wandering the finance section of the library, she picked up a worn book about investing. The idea that money could be managed instead of feared felt revolutionary. She took a part-time job at a coffee shop and quietly saved her tips. At 16, she downloaded an investing app and bought a small slice of a company with money she could barely spare. No one noticed. When she received an award at a school ceremony for academic achievement, Patricia promised to attend but chose instead to take Michael to a game he insisted was important. Samantha stood on the stage alone, accepting a certificate while other parents clapped and took photos. That night, she stopped hoping her effort would be recognized and started planning a life where recognition was unnecessary. College was not a dream Samantha stumbled into. It was a project she managed with spreadsheets, deadlines, and relentless focus. She filled out her own financial aid forms at the kitchen table while Patricia argued on the phone and Michael complained about bad calls on television. When the acceptance email arrived from a university in the city, offering partial scholarships and grants, Samantha read it twice to be sure it was real. Patricia said she was proud, distracted and cautious in the same breath. "Just don't go too far," she said. "We still need you." Michael dismissed it as nerd territory. Samantha moved into a cramped dorm room and felt free for the first time. She studied finance by day and took freelance coding work at night, fixing small problems for clients who paid just enough to keep her afloat. She attended workshops for the free food and stayed for the conversations. Back home, nothing improved. Michael dropped out of community college and began betting on sports through his phone. At first, the amounts were small. Then Patricia called one night in tears, explaining that his losses had piled onto her credit cards. Samantha picked up extra work and sent money home, telling herself it was temporary. When Samantha graduated with honors, no one from her family attended the ceremony. Patricia said she could not get time off. Michael said it did not matter. Samantha took her own photo, cap crooked, robe wrinkled, and went to work the following week at a small but ambitious financial technology firm. Her title was modest, but the work energized her. She learned how to read balance sheets like stories and how quickly money moved toward confidence and away from hesitation. Through colleagues, she discovered early-stage investment platforms and began following startups with quiet interest. She invested carefully, documenting every decision, every risk. Meanwhile, Michael's gambling escalated. Patricia continued to panic and deny in equal measure. Samantha set up an automatic monthly transfer to help with expenses. It became expected almost immediately. At work, her manager invited her into meetings she was not technically qualified for, letting her listen as investors discussed valuations and exits. Someone joked that she would run her own fund one day. The idea lodged itself in her mind and refused to leave. The gap between what Samantha built for others and what she built for herself became impossible to ignore. One of her early investments began to gain traction, appearing in industry conversations, then in funding announcements. Her small stake grew quietly on paper. When part of it turned into real money, Samantha sat alone in her apartment and understood something had shifted. She was no longer waiting for permission. She spent months preparing before leaving her job, saving aggressively and learning from people who had already made the leap. When she resigned, her manager smiled knowingly and wished her luck. The first year on her own was brutal. Some investments failed. Cash flow was tight. Doubt arrived often and late at night. Samantha kept her salary low and her focus sharp. At home, Patricia still referred to her work as that computer thing, unaware that the money she received each month came from Samantha's business, not a paycheck. When 2 portfolio companies succeeded in quick succession, Samantha increased the support she sent, watching as spending at home expanded without questions. Michael's habits did not change. Samantha's numbers did. Slowly, steadily, the equation began to balance. As Samantha moved deeper into the investment world, her days settled into a rhythm built on discipline rather than drama. She met founders in quiet cafes and on video calls that stretched across time zones. Some were brilliant and exhausted, others charming and careless. She learned to tell the difference quickly. Every decision she made was written down, every assumption tested. Risk was no longer something she feared. It was something she measured. At home, life continued on a smaller scale. Patricia called regularly, her conversations circling bills, stress, and Michael's latest attempt to turn things around. Samantha listened, offered practical suggestions, and sent money without commentary. It became clear that help was welcome only if it came without boundaries. When Samantha tried to talk about budgeting or counseling, Patricia brushed it aside. "You don't understand what he's dealing with," she would say. Samantha understood more than she let on. She watched her portfolio grow in increments, not leaps, learning patience the hard way. When a mobile payments company she backed was acquired, she sold part of her stake and reinvested the rest. The numbers climbed quietly. She did not celebrate. She adjusted. By her mid-30s, Samantha's combined assets crossed into territory she had once considered abstract. The total value of her holdings, spread across equity and liquid funds, edged upward with steady momentum. She lived simply by choice, not necessity. Her apartment was small but calm. Her clothes were unremarkable. When she visited Patricia, she wore the same sneakers she had owned for years. Patricia joked about her needing a real job with benefits, unaware of the irony.
Samantha let the comments pass.
She had learned that correcting the story only invited more misunderstanding.
Deep down, she knew what would happen if the truth surfaced. Money did not soften long-standing dynamics. It magnified them.
She kept her distance, emotionally if not physically, focusing on work and the few friendships she trusted. Her dashboard became a daily ritual, not a source of pride but a tool for accountability. When the number finally crossed 14 million, Samantha noticed it the way an engineer notices a completed bridge.
It meant the structure held.
The call from Patricia came a few weeks before Christmas, her voice tight with rehearsed worry. She listed rising costs and shrinking options without pausing for breath. "I don't know how I'm supposed to give Michael a proper Christmas," she said, as though it were a shared emergency. Samantha listened, staring out at the city from her apartment window. She heard the television in the background and Michael shouting at a missed play. Then Patricia hesitated before mentioning his car, how unreliable it was, how a better one would help him find work. Samantha opened her banking app out of habit and closed it just as quickly. She declined the car and offered something else instead. She would handle Christmas dinner. All of it. Patricia's relief was immediate. She protested weakly, then accepted. Over the next weeks, Samantha balanced her funds obligations with meticulous holiday planning. She treated the dinner like a project, comparing vendors, timing deliveries, building a menu that looked effortless. The total cost barely registered against her balance, but the old guilt surfaced anyway.
She ignored it and moved forward.
On Christmas Day, Samantha arrived early, arms full of carefully chosen additions that made the spread feel personal. Patricia hovered, inspecting bags and making nervous comments about budgets. Relatives arrived in waves, complimenting the food and the atmosphere. Patricia accepted the praise while crediting Samantha's connections through work. Michael arrived late, eyes on his phone, and went straight to the couch. Samantha watched him settle in with familiar entitlement and felt a strange calm. She had her laptop with her, as she always did, because a company in her portfolio was navigating a critical moment that could not wait for holidays. She planned to check in briefly and return to the table. During dinner, the conversation followed predictable paths until Patricia steered it toward Samantha. "She works on the computer," Patricia announced lightly. "Some freelance thing. Very unstable."
Polite laughter followed. Michael added a comment without looking up.
Samantha smiled, redirected the conversation, and excused herself. In the living room, she opened her laptop, checked a few updates, and closed it again, unaware of what she had left visible. The shift in the room was immediate and unmistakable. Michael's raised voice cut through the house, sharp with disbelief. Samantha returned to the living room to find everyone gathered around her open laptop. The dashboard filled the screen, the number impossible to miss. Accusations replaced jokes in seconds.
Patricia demanded explanations. Michael demanded access.
Samantha spoke calmly, naming facts they had never cared to learn. The argument unfolded exactly as it always had, only louder. Obligation, guilt, entitlement, all sharpened by a number they could not ignore. When Samantha said she was done sending money, the silence felt heavy. Michael's anger turned physical. Patricia's threats turned cold. Samantha gathered her things and left. Outside, the air felt clean. Her phone lit up with messages she did not read. That night, she chose clarity over chaos and reached out for legal protection. The door closed behind her, not just on a house, but on a role she had outgrown. The aftermath arrived faster than Samantha Ashford expected, but in a form she recognized immediately. Patricia took the story public, posting long, emotional messages online about betrayal and sacrifice, framing herself as a mother abandoned by a daughter corrupted by wealth. Michael added his own version, heavy on resentment and self-pity, suggesting that Samantha's refusal to help was worsening his mental health. Samantha read the posts once, then stopped. She saved screenshots, forwarded them to her lawyer, and returned to work. She had learned long ago that reacting emotionally only fed the narrative others wanted to build. Her lawyer responded the next morning with calm efficiency, outlining options and consequences. Within days, formal cease-and-desist letters were sent, precise in language and limited in scope. They demanded an end to the public accusations and the removal of false claims. When Patricia called, her voice was sharp with fury. Samantha repeated the same sentence without deviation. "If the posts stop, the letters stop." It was the first boundary Samantha had enforced without apology. Michael tried to test that boundary. He sent messages swinging between threats and pleas, insisting no judge would side with money over family. Samantha did not reply. The posts disappeared anyway. Without Samantha's monthly transfers, the fragile structure at home collapsed quickly. Michael's gambling accounts were frozen. Creditors stopped accepting excuses. The pressure that had been diffused by Samantha's quiet support concentrated all at once. Patricia attempted to manage it alone, borrowing from neighbors, opening new cards, selling small possessions online. For the first time, there was no safety net waiting in her inbox. Samantha heard about the chaos secondhand, through a cousin who had always been careful with words. Eventually, Michael was forced into treatment after a confrontation that could not be explained away. It was not redemption, but it was intervention. Samantha felt a complicated mix of relief and grief. She had not caused the crisis. She had simply stopped preventing it. Patricia's version of events began to fray under quiet scrutiny. Friends who had read her posts started asking questions she could not answer cleanly. How long had Samantha been helping? Why had Michael never held a job? Why were there always emergencies? Some sympathy remained, but the unquestioned support faded. When the house went on the market, Samantha saw the listing through a forwarded message. The rooms looked smaller than she remembered, stripped of clutter and illusion. The sale covered the worst of the debt, but it marked the end of an era Patricia had insisted on preserving. Samantha did not attend the move. She mourned the loss privately, aware that nostalgia did not equal responsibility. The house had been a symbol, not a solution. Its absence did not create the damage. It revealed it. With the noise gone, Samantha's life settled into something quieter and more deliberate. She hired additional staff so she no longer carried every decision alone. She set her salary at a level that felt sustainable and refused to inflate her lifestyle to match her assets. For the first time, she slept without waking to check numbers in the dark. She began taking weekends off, trusting systems she had built to hold without constant supervision. The fear that once drove her softened into focus. She also made a choice that felt like a natural extension of everything she had learned. She committed a portion of her firm's profits to programs teaching financial literacy to young women who had learned too early to be self-reliant. Girls who filled out their own forms. Girls who were told they would be fine. The work grounded her in a way accumulation never had. On quiet evenings, Samantha sometimes thought back to that Christmas dinner and the moment the room had gone still. For a long time, she had believed her success might finally earn her understanding. Now she saw the truth clearly. The money had not changed her family. It had simply stripped away the last layer of denial. What mattered most was not the number on the screen but the boundary she had drawn and held. Samantha no longer measured her worth by what she provided to others at her own expense. She measured it by what she protected. The silence that followed her decision was not emptiness. It was space. Time reshaped the story in ways Samantha Ashford could not have forced if she tried. Months passed without contact, then longer stretches where her phone stayed silent. The absence felt strange at first, like stepping into a room where a constant hum had finally stopped. She noticed how much energy that noise had consumed. Without it, decisions came easier. Her work deepened rather than expanded recklessly. She declined deals that did not align with her principles, even when the returns looked tempting. Experience had taught her that growth without discipline eventually demanded a price. When people in her professional circle learned fragments of what had happened with her family, they did not offer dramatic sympathy. They offered respect. Many quietly admitted they were carrying similar burdens. Samantha realized how common it was for the most capable person in a family to be treated as a resource instead of a human being. That recognition did not harden her. It clarified her sense of fairness. Michael's recovery was uneven and slow, according to the few updates Samantha received through distant relatives. There were periods of effort and periods of anger. He still blamed circumstances more than choices. Samantha resisted the urge to intervene, even when old instincts tugged at her. Helping without consent or accountability had never helped anyone before. Patricia, now living in a smaller apartment, stopped posting online entirely. The performance had lost its audience. Samantha did not feel victorious about that. She felt resolved. She had learned that closure did not always arrive with apologies or understanding. Sometimes it arrived quietly, when you stopped expecting people to become who they had never tried to be. She redirected the emotional energy she once spent managing her family into mentoring founders who reminded her of her younger self. Not reckless. Just determined and tired. As her firm matured, Samantha allowed herself a few indulgences she had postponed for years. She traveled without her laptop dictating every hour. She bought art she loved rather than items meant to signal success. Her relationships grew more intentional. She surrounded herself with people who asked questions and listened to answers. When she spoke about money now, it was with transparency rather than secrecy. Not to impress, but to educate. She watched young women in her programs discover the language of finance for the first time and recognized the same spark she had felt in that library years earlier.
It confirmed something she had suspected.
Wealth, handled well, was not about accumulation.
It was about options.
And boundaries were what made those options meaningful. On the anniversary of that Christmas, Samantha spent the evening alone by choice. She cooked a simple meal, opened a bottle of wine, and sat by the window watching the city move without her. She thought about the girl who had learned too early to be strong, the woman who had mistaken endurance for obligation, and the person she had become by choosing differently. There was sadness in the reflection, but no regret. She understood now that loyalty without limits was not loyalty at all. It was self-erasure. The decision she had made was not a rejection of family.
It was an acceptance of reality.
And reality, finally faced, had given her peace. Samantha Ashford never measured her life by the number that had shocked her family.
She measured it by the moment she said no and meant it. By the quiet that followed.
By the work she built without permission and the self she protected without apology. Her story did not end with reconciliation or applause.
It ended with clarity.
She had learned that love could exist without sacrifice, that success did not require explanation, and that walking away was sometimes the most honest act a person could make. For the first time, her future belonged entirely to her. Thank you for watching until the end. If this story resonated with you, remember this: your worth is not measured by how much you give, but by what you choose to protect. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video.